Exactly.
Why you're talking about the Jews so much, because they're the ones saying they are, but they're not.
That's right. And that's
so
why
you have, and I know a lot of people out there cringe when they start hearing about Scripture, but really, when you get into other documents, and Eli, you've done that. I mean, there's been Roman record about the trial of Jesus Christ. And I told a friend one time, I said, you don't have to believe that Jesus was God. I mean, I understand that. Mm-hmm. But you'd have to be an insane historical idiot to not think that there was this guy in flesh, came, was born, called Jesus Christ, and he about turned the world upside down with his politics.
Yeah, well, it would be quite something if a fictitious character marked time at 2 BC or 1 or 0 BC, or 1 AD, it'd be quite incredible if that were a fictitious character. But of course we have, and for those people who are doubters, because obviously a carpenter or somebody who just was a carpenter's son is not going to make waves in terms of being a famous person, but it's very obvious that the healings that he did, the miracles that he performed, made him quite famous. And so Jesus Christ was a very, very famous person at the time. And then we have now, because there's little historical documentation of his own life, since he was a simple carpenter, the only real Roman record would be the tax that his parents paid, when they had to pay that tax. And also when he came back, he had to pay a tax himself. And he paid that with a miraculous coin. He got a coin out of a fish's mouth, and he paid the Roman tax.
Well, I imagine you could spend another hour talking about that event, huh?
Yeah, right. But every single other character in the gospel accounts, Pilate, Tiberius, in fact, the writers of the gospels, the various villains, the scribes and Pharisees, Annas, Caiaphas, etc. There's historical documentation of all of these people. Every single one of them.
Wasn't there some documentation of the trial?
Yes, there was. Yes.
Okay. And by Rome.
Exactly. Well, the Vatican has this documentation. The Vatican has this documentation, but records like this, they keep close to their vest, and they don't release these types of documents. I can't understand why, but somebody's documents. Yeah.
Couldn't we be talking about the same pot of people, though? I mean, you look at what we call Jewish today; they wear a yarmulke.
Right, they do.
And then you turn around and you look at the Cardinals, and they got their red beanies on, too.
Yeah, the Catholics, they wear a red yarmulke, and the Jews wear a black one. And that's about the only difference between the two religions.
And then you turn it around, and you have the black Pope and the Catholics, and we could do a lot of comparing there. So we're talking about, and by the way, I know about those Jesuits because some of my undergraduate schooling was at a private Jesuit college, and was that a trip? Boy, was that a trip.
Yeah.
Because I'm not Catholic, so.
Well, neither are the Jesuits. And they're not Christians either.
Oh, yes. Okay, so you got this foundation.
We have this historical charade going on, which the Jews pretending to be Israel.
So we got a conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy, yes. And let me just go into the history of how the Jews today, I think last time we talked about the fact that the modern Jews are 95% Khazar and only 5% Edomite or Sephardic, And every historian that you will talk to will admit that the Jews fall into these two categories, the Khazars. They are the Ashkenazi, and the Sephardic. And in fact, it's pretty well known that the Ashkenazi Jews are not descended from any tribe of Israel. They are simply a separate category of people. They are the Japhetic /Mongol /Hittite people who had a huge confederation. Their heyday was around 800 AD, the 7th and 8th centuries AD. Mm-hmm. They had a major war against Russia, and Russia finally defeated them. And ultimately, the Khazar nation was incorporated into the Russian nation. It was eventually called the Pale, under the Tsar.
Really?
Yes,
oh, really?
Right.
Why did they call it the Pale, I wonder?
Well, because they had separated, the Russian Empire had always had trouble with the Khazars. And, understandably, as the world is having trouble with them today. It's called Zionism, The Zionists, the Khazars invented Zionism. And they also invented communism. And the world is having trouble with these Khazars today. But these Khazars were always assassinating Russian officials, and the Tsars, I think it was Nicholas I who established the Pale, if I'm not mistaken, basically set off an area where the Jews could just live amongst themselves and not bother anybody else, That was the whole point of creating the Pale, all right? But that didn't work because the rabbis would send assassins out of the Pale to kill Russian officials wherever they happened to be, And yes.
So they had operations going
yes.
back then. Okay.
Exactly. And then there were certain, in villages where Jews would settle within Russia proper. What they would do, they would start lending money to peasants and getting those peasants into debt. And sooner or later, those peasants would lose their property to the Jewish moneylender. Isn't that a unique story, right? And
well, they also, and you just mentioned that they did all this assassinating, but right now the Mossad's in trouble, having stolen about, now it's up to 15 United Kingdom passports imitating themselves as UK citizens.
Right, yeah, and a group of those.
That's a big part of espionage that I'll be covering in the future. But it's a mess, and they've got their hands caught in the cookie jar.
Well, yeah, they assassinated somebody in Dubai using those passports, and it was caught on tape. Yeah. It's caught on tape. It's like, it's an assassination squad. That's what al-Mossad is, and they're best at pretending to be somebody else, committing a crime and blaming it on who they're pretending to be, and just like they're pretending to be Israel, So the Jews are good at this. This is their modus operandi. The rabbis of Judaism have been pretending to be Israel, have been pretending to be teaching the law of Moses, have been pretending that the religion called Judaism is based on the law of Moses, which is also a lie. That's not true either.
So these guys were in operation at the time of Jesus.
That's right. They were called the Pharisees.
So we had a perverted religious system going on at the time, I guess.
That's right. And the way this developed was during the Maccabean period. And the Maccabean period is part of the history of Judea, which is very little understood. There's very little written about it. I probably have written more about the intertestamental period, that period between when the Old Testament was completed and the New Testament was begun.
Yeah, what is that, about 400 years or something like that?
Well, it's not quite. It's more like 250 years, something like that, Because the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament directly from the Hebrew into the Greek, was completed around, I think it was 240 BC. And that was by Ptolemy Philadelphus, who was the king of Egypt, the Greek king of Egypt at the time. And he had a great library, and he wanted a copy of the Hebrew Scriptures.
Now that wasn't the same guy as Origen, is it?
No. Origen is a very much later Christian scholar. He was considered one of the church founders. Early church fathers. But in this time period, Ptolemy Philadelphus wanted to have a copy of the Hebrew Scriptures, which is not the Jewish Scriptures. We must differentiate between Hebrews and Jews. They're not the same category. They're not the same ethnic group.